Have you ever noticed how your body reacts to things like a split second before your conscious mind even catches up?
Oh, absolutely. It happens all the time.
Right, like you're walking into a perfectly normal meeting,
Yeah.
nothing out of the ordinary at all, but suddenly your shoulders are bracing as if you're preparing to carry a 100-pound weight.
Yes. Or maybe a specific, seemingly harmless topic comes up in conversation over dinner.
Oh, I hate when that happens.
Right, and before you can even form a thought about it, there's this sudden tightening knot right in the center of your stomach.
Exactly. And you tell yourself, I'm fine, this is fine, but your biology is just screaming a completely different story.
It's a really profound disconnect, I think, because, well, we are culturally conditioned to believe that we're in complete control of our narratives.
That our brain is the boss.
Exactly, that our conscious, rational mind is the ultimate authority. But those physical sensations, the sudden bracing, the dropped temperature, the tightening jaw, they aren't just random neurological misfires.
What are they then?
They're deeply profound unconscious communications. And they're essentially demanding airtime.
I'll be completely honest here. This is something I've been wrestling with a lot lately.
Really? How so?
Yeah, I've just noticed this lingering, inexplicable inner tension, like a holding pattern in my jaw or a tightness in my chest that just won't let go, even when I'm, sitting on my own couch, completely safe.
That makes total sense.
And looking at our topic for today's deep dive, this hidden language of the body, I realized I'm not just stressed. I'm starting to see that my muscles, my nerves, even my posture, they're actively archiving an emotional history.
An archive that your brain thought it completely left behind.
Exactly. And framing it as an archive, I feel like that changes the entire paradigm.
It really does. Because we tend to look for trauma or emotional history in the stories we tell, But there is a silence that speaks much louder than any spoken confession.
Wow.
It doesn't live in the pauses between our words. It lives in the fascia, in the organs, the nervous system.
So if your conscious mind absolutely refuses to process a feeling,
Right. If an emotion is simply too dangerous or too painful or even just too socially unacceptable to acknowledge.
the body physically steps in to catch it.
Exactly.
Okay, let's unpack the mechanics of that because my mind is a master at telling me I'm over something.
As most of our minds are.
Right. I'll say, oh, I've moved on, or I've forgiven that person, or that situation didn't really affect me. I construct this very neat, resilient narrative.
Yes, the narrative of being perfectly fine.
Yeah, it's almost like my conscious mind is like a corporate PR department spinning a story of success to the public. Everything is great, profits are up, we are completely fine.
I love that analogy.
But then my nervous system is the whistleblower down in the basement,
Yeah.
keeping all the actual receipts.
The PR department is working overtime to protect your ego, but the whistleblower has the undeniable biological proof.
And we really have to look at how that proof is stored, right?
We do, because it's not just a poetic metaphor, it's physiological. When you experience something unbearable, and your prefrontal cortex, which is the conscious storytelling part of the brain, essentially shuts down the processing to protect you, well, your amygdala has already fired.
That's the brain's alarm center, right?
Exactly. It had already flooded your nervous system with adrenaline and cortisol. And that chemical and muscular reality doesn't just evaporate because you decided to look on the bright side.
Right, you can't just positive think your way out of a cortisol flood.
You absolutely cannot. When the psyche's solution to an unbearable feeling is to repress it, the energy of that emotion becomes displaced.
Displaced where?
Downward and inward, right into the physical tissues. I mean, imagine a woman speaking about a deeply unsettling childhood event. Her words are articulate, measured, maybe even elegant.
But she sounds completely fine.
Right. She describes a specific room, the people there, the dress she was wearing, the conscious narrative your PR department says all is well. But as she speaks, her left hand begins to tremble.
Wait, literally just her hand?
Just a fine, persistent vibration in the hand. She doesn't consciously notice it, but the hand is trapped in the chemical loop of that moment.
Wow. So the conscious mind sealed the memory away so she could survive. But the hand was literally there. The hand remembers the visceral reality of what happened.
Exactly. The unbearable thought became an unbearable sensation. The terror that couldn't be consciously felt by the child, well, it became a tremor in the adult.
That is wild.
The mind says, I am fine, but the peripheral nervous system is whispering, I am still there. I'm in that room, waiting for the danger to pass.
Okay, I can accept that the body stores the threat, but I get hung up on the The translation process.
What do you mean?
Like if the body is this archives,
Yeah.
how does it choose to file these receipts? Because we're talking about the grammar of the symptom here. It's not just random generalized pain, is it?
No, not at all. Symptoms are incredibly precise. They are the physical inscriptions of psychic laws.
Give me an example.
Well, let's look at the spine and posture. The spine is the literal and metaphorical pillar upon which our sense of self is erected.
Okay.
So think about a childhood spent in an unpredictable environment where the safest strategy was to just be invisible. The constant internal command is, do not take up space. Do not draw attention.
So you literally make yourself small.
That's how.
Like you hunch your shoulders, you cave your chest in, you bend your neck so you don't catch someone's eye.
And over time, that isn't just a temporary posture you adopt, it becomes the structural reality of your body.
It freezes that way.
Yes. Years later, in adulthood, the spine retains that exact geometry of self-erasure. The chronic muscular contraction alters the fascia, it pulls constantly on the joints, and that childhood imperative literally calcifies into chronic back pain or disc degeneration.
Oh, wow. So the body internalized the rule so completely that it just enforces it automatically.
Precise.
It's a literal translation of an emotional rule into a physical structure.
Yeah.
It actually reminds me of some of those wild historical cases I've read about, like where someone develops a completely paralyzed arm out of nowhere.
Yes, I see variations of this in practice. You'll have someone develop a physical constraint, and when you finally get to the root of it, the paralysis corresponds exactly to a moment of traumatic helplessness in their past.
Like their arms stiffened because they couldn't physically move to help someone they loved.
Exactly. Or someone's vision suddenly blurring when they're confronted with a scene they simply cannot bear to witness.
It's so literal.
It is. These cases illustrate displacement perfectly. The body translates a psychic impasse into a physical constraint. It makes manifest what the mind rendered invisible.
That is fascinating.
Just think about the motor plans our brains create. A child, for example, cannot safely express rage at a parent they entirely depend on for survival.
Right, because the consequences of actually striking out would be catastrophic. You can't bite the hand that feeds you when you're 7 years old and have nowhere else to go.
So what happens neurologically? The brain initiates the motor plan to strike out. The muscles in the shoulder and jaw are flooded with the calcium and ATP needed to contract.
The punch is loaded.
But simultaneously, the inhibitory system slams on the brakes because it's too dangerous to follow through.
So what happens to all that energy?
The unvoiced protest becomes a literal knot in the throat. The unthrown punch freezes in a chronic tension in the shoulders.
Oh my gosh.
The muscles get stuck in an isometric stalemate. The body basically becomes the dumping ground for the defensive action the ego deemed too dangerous to complete.
Okay, but if it's trying to protect us, why does it have to show up as, like, debilitating pain or illness? That feels like a flaw in the system.
I hear that a lot.
Because if my body's just trying to manage an unthrown punch, why does it manifest as a migraine that puts me in dark room for 2 days? Or severe irritable bowel syndrome? That feels like an attack, you know? Not a protective mechanism.
It's a very natural reaction to feel betrayed by your own body when you're in pain. But the symptom isn't a direct attack. It is what we call a compromise formation.
A compromise between who?
Between two fiercely opposing forces inside you.
Okay, go on.
On one side, you have the repressed emotion, the rage, the terror, the grief demanding to be felt and expressed.
And the other side?
And the other side, you have the ego desperately trying to maintain the fiction that everything is fine and you are perfectly safe. The symptom emerges right at that fault line.
So a migraine isn't just random head pain?
Often, no. It's the physical manifestation of vascular constriction that occurs when you are simultaneously trying to express and suppress immense emotional pressure.
So the vascular system in your head is literally caught in a tug of war.
Exactly. The symptom allows the truth to surface just enough to demand your attention, because you have to stop what you're doing. But it keeps the core memory concealed enough to protect your fragile identity.
The body takes up the burden of speech when speech itself has been prohibited.
Beautifully put, yes.
Okay, I see the tug of war, but that implies a present-day threat. I'm a grown adult in a safe office.
Right.
So why is my nervous system activating a defense mechanism or a compromise formation meant for a childhood I left decades ago? The threat is gone.
And this is where we hit upon the cruelest irony of somatic memory.
Which is,
The body remembers everything perfectly, but it cannot tell time.
wait, it has no concept of past versus present.
None at all. The somatic unconscious is not linear, it is layered.
How does that work?
Well, conscious memory uses the hippocampus to stamp events with a time and a date. Like, this happened in 1998, it is over now.
Okay, that makes sense.
But traumatic or highly charged emotional memory often bypasses the hippocampus entirely and goes straight to the amygdala.
And the amygdala has no clock.
Exactly. The nervous system that registered terror at age 6 does not know that the adult body now possesses strength, agency, a bank account, and a car to drive away in.
Wow. So to my nervous system, a boss raising their voice in a modern air-conditioned office meeting, it lacks a timestamp.
Yes.
It just reads as volatile giant in the room and deploys the exact same reaction I needed when I was a helpless kid.
The body lives in an eternal present tense of past danger.
An eternal present tense. That's haunting.
Past and present coexist in the exact same neural pathways. This is why you can't just logic your way out of it. We see this vividly in a phenomenon known as somatic transference.
What's that look like in practice?
Somatic transference isn't a cognitive realization. It's not thinking, oh, my boss reminds me of my strict father.
So it's not a thought at all.
No, it's entirely physiological. It's procedural memory.
Meaning?
It's sitting across from someone who has a specific physical stature or maybe a certain tone of voice, and suddenly, inexplicably, experiencing intense neck tension, shallow breathing, and a drop in body temperature.
But wait, procedural memory is like riding a bike, right? It's muscle memory for actions. Are you saying my body has muscle memory for being yelled at?
That is a brilliant way to put it. Yes, you have procedural memory for defensive posturing.
That is crazy.
The body recognizes a spatial dynamic or an auditory tone that once signaled danger, and it immediately automatically deploys the old survival strategy before your conscious mind has even registered the similarity.
So it transfers the physiological response to the present moment, completely bypassing any cognitive thought.
Exactly.
It really feels like we're walking around running outdated survival software. Like, we downloaded this intense antivirus program in 1995 to survive a specific threat.
And it was brilliant at the time.
Right, like restricting your breathing to avoid the vulnerability of wanting emotional connection from an unavailable parent. Brilliant childhood strategy. It kept you functional.
Yes, it did.
But our bodies never got the update that we're older now, that we have agency. And now that same software is just crashing the adult system.
The outdated software analogy works perfectly, but we have to remember the hardware is biological.
What do you mean?
You can't just run an uninstaller. These adaptations are physically woven into your neural pathways and muscular habits.
Oh.
The diaphragm that restricted breath to survive childhood neglect now restricts breath during adult intimacy, preventing genuine connection.
And the jaw that clenched to contain childhood fury now grinds through the night, silently reenacting battles that were never fought.
Exactly. The body deploys these strategies in adult contexts, and instead of producing safety, they just produce symptoms.
So how do we actually update the biological software? Because clearly, fighting the symptom doesn't work. Telling myself, just relax your shoulders, hasn't worked once in the history of shoulders.
It hasn't, because treating the symptom without decoding its message is like silencing a witness before hearing their testimony.
Which is kind of what we usually do, isn't it?
Yes. Modern approaches often treat the body as a malfunctioning machine. We try to quiet the tremor, medicate the digestive issue, numb the back pain.
Just putting duct tape over the check engine light and hoping the engine fixes itself?
Precisely. And while alleviating suffering is absolutely necessary, if we stop at symptom management, we miss the entire message, and the engine never fixes itself.
It just keeps running rough.
In fact, if you just suppress the symptom, the body will usually find a louder, more destructive way to get your attention.
Okay, so what's the alternative?
Well, here is the paradox. When people start to really explore these underlying emotions, they often encounter something we call resistance.
Resistance. Like when you start digging into this stuff, maybe you're doing deep introspective work and suddenly your back pain flares up worse than ever.
Yes, exactly that.
Or you get debilitating migraines right when you feel like you're making a breakthrough.
Yes. When physical symptoms flare up during deep emotional exploration, people often think they are failing or regressing.
Oh no, I'm getting worse.
Right. But mechanistically, it is actually the body's loyal guardianship.
Wait, really?
Yes. As the conscious mind approaches the traumatic core, the nervous system detects a threat to your stability. It increases the physical holding pattern because it's trying to prevent a system override.
So the migraine worsens as the memory surfaces. The back pain flares to distract you.
Exactly. Resistance isn't the enemy. It is the guardian of timing.
It's the body saying, hold on, we need more structural scaffolding before we take this load-bearing wall down.
That's a perfect way to phrase it. It's protecting the fragile ego from being crushed by the unintegrated memory.
So healing isn't this dramatic movie moment catharsis where you cry once and just get over it.
Not at all. It requires somatic reeducation. You have to convince the autonomic nervous system through slow, repeated lived experiences that the danger has actually passed.
Okay, what does somatic re-education actually look like in practice? Like, if my jaw is chronically tight or my stomach is in knots, how do I convince my nervous system that it's 2026 and not 1995?
It starts with noticing the sensation without immediately trying to eradicate it.
Which is so hard to do.
It is very hard, but if you notice your jaw is tight, instead of forcefully stretching it or criticizing yourself, you bring curious attention to it.
Like just observing it.
Yes. You might ask, what happens if I let this tension exist while I also notice the feeling of the chair supporting my weight?
You introduce sensory information that signals present-day safety alongside the historical tension.
Exactly.
So you're diluting the panic with present-moment data.
You are uncoupling the physical sensation from the historical threat. In somatic work, this is often called pendulation.
Pendulation.
Yes, you let your attention swing between the area of tension and an area of the body that feels neutral or safe. Slowly, the nervous system realizes it can experience the biological arousal of the old memory without actually being in danger.
The autonomic response begins to slow down.
It does.
Which means the goal isn't to pretend the memory never happened. We aren't trying to erase the archive.
The archive is permanent, the scar will remain.
Yep.
But the goal of somatic re-education is that the scar will no longer pull all the surrounding tissue into a painful, chronic distortion.
The body learns to hold its history without being possessed by it.
Exactly. The symptom is not the problem we need to eliminate. It is the solution to a deeper problem we haven't identified yet.
Wow.
We don't force the symptom to leave. We make it obsolete by finally listening to it.
We make it obsolete by listening to it. That completely reframes everything for me.
It's a very different way of living in your body.
Yeah. Our bodies are not these broken machines constantly betraying us with aches and pains. They are intricate, incredibly loyal libraries of our lived experiences.
They really are.
Every ache, every spasm, every chronic tension holds a chapter of an unfinished autobiography.
It's an autobiography that is asking to be read. Not with impatience, and certainly not with frustration, but with the reverence due to a faithful witness who has carried your truth when no one else would.
That is just beautifully said. So, to you listening right now, the next time you experience an inexplicable physical reaction, a sudden bracing, or a recurring tension that just won't fade, I want you to pause.
Just take a breath.
Yeah. Instead of just treating it as an annoyance to be medicated away or stretched out, invite it into the room. Assume it has a positive intent. Ask yourself, what is this trying to tell me? What memory is my body holding that my mind was too afraid to keep?
Approach the aching body not as a mechanical failure to be solved, but as a text to be deciphered.
Absolutely. And I want to leave you with a final, lingering question to ponder. If our own nervous systems keep a perfect physical record of everything we've ever felt, but couldn't say what happens to the history of the people who came before us.
That is the big question.
Right. Could that unexplained tension bracing your shoulders actually be an inherited vigilance? Can we carry the unspoken somatic memories of our parents or our grandparents passed down through our biology before we even have words of our own?
It's entirely possible.
Think about those bracing shoulders you felt at the start of our deep dive. Maybe the weight you're carrying isn't entirely yours to begin with.